Welcome everyone to BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. I am BC, and today we're going to be going through sort of a basic restring and intonation adjustment on one of my headless basses. But before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge what I feel is the greatest celebrity product endorsement ever. It is Dolly Parton's original maple syrup. Yes, Dolly Parton maple syrup. You need to start your morning off right if you're going to be working 9 to 5 with Jolene. And I apologize to everyone for that. Okay, so what we have here are two of my Hohner headless basses. These were Hohner's sort of budget alternatives to the Steinberger, and it was great for people like me who couldn't afford a Steinberger in the 80s and still can't now. I call this one the Anne Boleyn and this one the Catherine Howard. The Anne Boleyn is the Hohner B2B, which means it has the EMG Select Active Electronics and is a set neck, whereas the Catherine Howard is sort of a more conventional design. It's a PJ passive pickup arrangement with a bolt-on neck. And what I'd like to do for you today, in the interest of full disclosure, I did already polish the frets and condition the neck on this instrument just to kind of speed up the process and because that's sort of tedious. But first thing I want to do is show you how you go about adjusting the necks on these basses, which I think is a real advantage over most instruments, most conventional headstock instruments. For these basses, you insert the truss rod wrench into an aperture at the top of the neck, where this little pseudo nut is, and you adjust it that way. It would be the same thing on this instrument. Oddly enough, these take different sized wrenches. Now, the advantage to this is you're not going to lose a truss rod cover. You're putting the wrench in at a straight angle, so you've got really a lot more leverage. It seats very tightly, less chance of it stripping, and I think it's a real advantage that these instruments have over a conventional bass with a headstock. Both of these basses are 34-inch scale. Most headless basses are standard scale. And that brings me to the next kind of criticism people have, is that you can't get a lot of variety with regards to the strings you can buy for them. For these basses, I tend to use Rotosound's swing bass. It's the standard set they've been making for basically 60 years now. 45, 65, 105 round wounds. They were the first round wounds, and you can find them pretty much anywhere. I also use I have a GHS double ball set that's really quite good, and several others in even 5-string formats. So you can find the strings. They're pretty much available in 2 or 3 standard gauges primarily. 5 strings are pretty easy to find. It's harder to get anything exotic like a 6-string or any different scales, and you will pay a little more, but I do think people sort of exaggerate the issues of the strings. Now, with regards to the strings themselves, they are quote-unquote double ball strings. So what does that mean practically? Well, obviously it means that the strings themselves have 2 balls on them. However, one of them is larger than the other. And what that means is you will never confuse the two, because the smaller end always seats here where a headstock would be, at this sort of upper neck 0 fret. And if you look, most headless basses do utilize a 0 fret to sort of compensate for not having a conventional nut. You can see it a little bit better on this bass here that I have pointed towards the camera. Now, once you've seated the string, which you slide right through the top here, you then move down to the bottom. So in this case, we're going to seat the G, which slides in there. And if you'll notice, it goes right in here, right at the bottom, drops right into sort of the tuner. Let me show you there. And then you just slide the, hope you can see that, And then once that's in place, what you can do is just push the saddle back a hair, and you want to tighten the tuner just enough to hold the string in place. So that's the G. Going to move to the E. Once again, the smaller ball end goes up to the top of the neck, seats there. Then we move down to the bottom and slide it right in here into this little saddle aperture there. Oops, let me push that up a bit. And once it's in place, we push the saddle back and we just finger tighten with the tuner so it holds it into place. And we're going to repeat the process. Once again, we compare the ball sizes. The smaller one up to the top of the neck into this anchor piece here where the headstock would be. The larger ball anchors right down here into the tuner at the tail piece. Push that saddle back enough for it to seat underneath the front of the tail piece there. Check the ball strings again. Small at the top. And then we insert the D at the bottom. Then, whoops, that one's a little bit of a trick. There we go. Just get that seated. There is one in every crowd. Ah, there we go. And you just finger tighten it underneath the back there. Now the one thing that is kind of a headache on these instruments, and I will show it to you here, hope we can get enough light in there. To adjust the intonation, there is a retaining nut on the top of the tail piece that you put an Allen wrench in, or Allen key, whichever you prefer. You loosen it enough to allow you to physically slide the saddles back and forth. Now that can be kind of a headache because you have to be able to move one saddle without moving its neighbor. It's a little bit of a trick. It's something that a lot of people complain about with this tailpiece design, and I do think that there's a lot of legitimacy to that complaint. Once you get used to it, I think it's fairly easy. In this case, it's super easy because often I eyeball it off of the other bass, and with it being the same string gauge, it's usually pretty close. You would use the same Allen key to adjust the saddle height, and that would essentially complete your setup. I'm not going to take you through the slide back and forth, tune, and check because that's kind of tedious. But once you're used to doing it, it's really not too bad. And essentially that's the whole process. You can change the strings faster on a headless bass than you can a conventional bass with a headstock because you're not winding them around the post, you're not clipping them. You lose a little bit of time doing the intonation. Having said that, unless you do really significant string gauge changes, I don't find a lot of wandering intonation with these. So they hold intonation well, and they stay in tune quite well too. So that's everything I wanted to show you guys today. I want to thank you for staying with me to the bitter end. If there's a piece of gear you're interested in or a type of gear, put a comment in the space below, and I'll see if maybe I have something like it or maybe have it. If you did like this video, like and subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. Tell me why. I try to respond to all comments, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you have a great day. This is BC from BC's Offbeat Bass Gear, and stay safe, everyone.